You are listening to Charlie's Truth audio blog, entry 15. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Hello, friends. Hello, family. Hello, community. Welcome to another entry over here at Charlie's Truth audio blog. We here. I pray that you all are well. As you're listening to this audio, I pray that you are in a peaceful state, that you are feeling good, feeling peaceful, feeling in flow, that life is just loving all over you and you are just witnessing it all in peace, in a state of peace. Hi. So for today's entry, I am here because I want to share something with y'all. I was working on the copy for the details page for the membership. And as I was doing a write-up for the WhatsApp community and the community guidelines, I was thinking about safe spaces, right? I feel like I've heard that statement so many times about safe spaces, and I've definitely come to a place where I am not a supporter of safe spaces. And not that I'm not a supporter, I personally do not indicate that I create safe spaces, okay? And so as I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the fact that, I believe in brave spaces and why I don't feel like safe spaces can be a thing, right? And please, when I say this, people, this is not a fact. This is just an opinion. And this opinion can change tomorrow, because what happens is that I'm looking at it from my own lens, right? I'm looking at it from a very narrow lens. And though I have considered other perspectives, you guys might have a perspective that I really resonate with when it comes to the idea or the concept of safe spaces. So I'm not saying that I just outright don't agree in safe spaces, or I don't believe that people should create them. I think the idea of it sounds beautiful and sounds lovely, but when you think about safe spaces, it's like, how? I feel like that's where I am. It's like, how do you create a safe space? What exactly is a safe space, right? Because when I hear about safety, I hear it's subjective. For me, safety is subjective. And so I wanted to come through and chat it up, right? Use this as an opportunity to maybe start a conversation. I also hit up ChatGPT because, that's my assistant, because hello, why not? Because I like to consider other perspectives. I like to consider what else can be true, right? Just because I have this belief or this idea, I'm not married to it. And even if I was married to it, hey, I believe in divorces. So I'm not, it's not the end all be all. None of my beliefs are the end all be all. They're just what I'm grounded in at the moment. But like I say, my truth is my truth only in a moment. Because if I get information that help me expand the idea of what I believe to be true, then I will adjust the idea of what I believe to be true. Like, it's not that deep for me, right? I just feel like there's so many things can be true. So many things can exist at once. And we can also get to the same place taking a different route. And so for me, the idea of safety is just subjective, right? Whether someone feels safe or not is not something that I can control. Because then we all have like trauma, we all have memories in our body that we may not be aware of. So I can't promise you safety because I don't know if you will feel safe. Because I also can't control what other people say, what other people bring into the space, and how other people are operating. And so I think the idea of a safe space just sounds like, I get where you're going, but tell me how. Tell me how. And so as I was doing this write-up and thinking about safe spaces versus brave spaces, and it could also be a courageous space. It could be whatever kind of space you want to create. But I know that safe spaces have been a big thing at some point, especially when I was in social work school. And I will always just question it, like, how do you create a safe space? How can you guarantee someone that this space is safe for them? How do you do that? Tell me more, right? And I know the other side of it is like, Charlie, they don't mean it like that. But it's like, hey, you know what? When someone reads this, what is their expectations? what are their expectations? So this is just like maybe a possible way to create a conversation. And so as me and ChatGPT was chatting it up, I decided to create an outline for this audio post, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to explore this idea of like safe spaces and why I believe in brave spaces as opposed to safe spaces. And then one of the things I wasn't aware of is like the origin of this concept of safe spaces, right? Like I know that I heard a lot about it, especially in social work school, especially when you're in a lot of wellness spaces and you go into these events. People use the term safe space. And I used to always just be like, but how? And how? How? Like, tell me more. So I wanted to know, where do the concept of safe spaces originate? And this is what I got. The concept of safe spaces originated in the 1960s and 1970s, initially in feminist and LGBTQ plus movements. These spaces were intended to provide refuge for discrimination, where individuals could express themselves freely without fear of being judged or harmed. Over time, the idea expanded to various educational and professional settings, aiming to foster inclusivity and protection from emotional or psychological harm. Y'all, even the idea of aiming to foster inclusivity and protection from emotional and psychological harm. What? How do you protect someone from emotional or psychological harm when you have no idea what trauma they're holding in their bodies? Tell me more. And that's my whole thing. It's like, on one end, right, we are to be trauma informed, right? We are to approach every person, every situation, assuming that the person have experienced some sort of trauma, right? Because we don't know what's going to trigger someone. We don't know what's going to activate someone. That's just a truth. I can have the best intentions in the world, but my impact can be shit, can be harmful. It wasn't my intention, but it happens because of what that other person is carrying within their bodies. So I feel like for me, safety is not something we can give someone. You can't give someone safety. I just don't see it. Yeah, to an extent, right? You could probably provide physical safety for someone, but the idea of like emotional and protection from emotional and psychological harm, because usually you don't know the harm happened until after it happened. You don't know it's harmful until after the fact, until the impact. And please hear me out. I am not bashing anyone who believes in safe spaces. I am simply questioning it. And I'm simply curious about it. And I also have a strong opinion about it. So I don't know. A million things is happening at once. And yeah, that's just where I'm at. Right? So for me, like, I believe in the notion of that safety is subjective, right? Like I've been saying, and what feels safe for one person might not for another. And this is due to our own like unique experiences, our traumas, our personal histories, the stories we've told ourselves, our mindset, our beliefs, right? We see the world not as it is, but as we are. Okay? And so like all of that plays into whether or not something may come off to you as emotional or psychological harm, right? It's so subjective what can be harmful for a person, all right? And so like this subjectivity makes it challenging to create like this universally safe space. And so when I think about how subjective safety is, right, I think about my own experiences. I think about like how I've been activated and uncomfortable in spaces that were deemed safe, right? But I've also facilitated spaces that people later told me that they were triggered by what other participants had said. While my perception of what was happening is that like this was a discussion that was valuable and honest. However, people were feeling uncomfortable. They were feeling activated, aka triggered, right? Like they were not feeling safe. But here I was, at least not emotionally, right? Or even probably psychologically. But here I was thinking that this was a valuable opportunity and a valuable space, because here we are having a discussion about something that is uncomfortable, something that people are passionate about, but yet they have differing of opinions about it, but they're so passionate about it. And you know, when people are passionate about something, they deeply care. And so here I was thinking that this is a safe and space, but at the end of the day, right, like everyone is having their own experience. And I am someone who believes in being free. I'm someone who believes in being able to have uncomfortable talks and conversations. That's just what I believe in. Like I step up to conversations and discussions that are uncomfortable, even in my relationships, because I feel like it's so important in order to have healthy, honest relationships that there is truth there. And sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to talk through, to process. But I feel like it's also necessary for our all of our health. And so that's partially why. And then I think about the times where I've been in therapy and I've been in spaces where, people are telling me how I should feel about something that happened to me, right? How I should feel angry, how I should feel this, how I should feel that. That if it was them, how they wouldn't be able to tolerate it. But here I am, unbothered, right? In my neutral state of being, even when something that others perceive as harmful is happening. Because it may be harmful to them, but it's not harmful to me for whatever reason. And so I believe that like safety just isn't a universal thing. Just like the idea of healing isn't linear. It meets us where we are. It meets us as who we are. It meets us. It just meets us. And what may activate or trigger me in one season may not in the next. So I feel like, I always want to create like these open spaces where diversity can be expressed, right? Where we can learn from each other and disagreements does not result in disrespect, but in community building. And I will say, even in those moments where people felt uncomfortable, it was never a disrespectful place. No one ever like started attacking the person. They focused on what was being said. And that's what I tend to do, right? Like if I notice that now you're attacking a person as opposed to focusing on what's being said and addressing that, as a facilitator, I'm going to step in. Because yes, I want y'all to be free and we're all adults and y'all can say what needs to be said. That's only fair. But like once we start attacking people, okay, now. And so like maybe when people are talking about safe spaces, that's what they're talking about. Right? So I guess like the other thing is maybe the idea of safe spaces is wider than what I'm perceiving it as. Maybe everyone who talks about safe spaces have their own idea what a safe space is. So that's another take on it, right? Like that I can consider. And that's fair. I mean, regardless of what, if you create safe spaces, you create safe spaces. Like, it's not like I'm going to come to your space and be like, there's no such thing. I'm just saying that I don't create safe spaces, that I don't even know how to create a universally safe space for someone. And just because I don't know how doesn't mean it doesn't happen for people. And it's also not my ministry. It's just not my ministry. So there's that, and it may not be my ministry for other reasons that I'll go into later that has more to do with what I believe about our egos and what I believe about when we are triggered or activated. And so there's even layers to that process or that perspective, right? And so for me, like I said, like I believe in brave spaces. And so my perspective is to develop brave spaces. And this kind of shifts the focus from guaranteed safety to fostering an environment where vulnerability and courage are encouraged. Okay. This acknowledges the inherent unpredictability of personal triggers and the complexity of individual safety. So for me, like brave spaces are environments intentionally designed to encourage vulnerability, authenticity, and personal growth. In a brave space, right, individuals are invited to take emotional risk, share their true selves, and engage in honest, respectful dialogue. These spaces prioritize mutual understanding and compassion, recognizing that while complete safety cannot be guaranteed, support and love are paramount. Brave spaces foster an atmosphere where mistakes are viewed as opportunities for learning, and all participants are committed to holding each other in a spirit of empathy and acceptance. There's a lot of spaces where you go into and they say, when people are talking, assume the best. Assume that they're coming from a great place. Assume that they're coming from a place of love, right? Because sometimes we may hear something and we go back to our old memories or we go back to our past experiences and we assume that it's coming from a negative place. And I want to give you an example. So, say for instance, I was watching this video, or no, I saw this post on Twitter. And in this post, I know calling an ex is just, I'll get there one day. So I saw this post on Twitter, right? And there was this, I think it was in Japan. And basically, this young woman, it was a baseball game. This young woman caught the ball, right, of her favorite, like, baseball player. And in the arena, she allowed the ball to be passed around so other people could see it and ooh and ah over it. And then it came back to her, right? But before I got to the sentence where it came back to her, when I saw that it got passed around, I thought, my thoughts were, oh my gosh, someone gave her a fake ball back in return, right? Like, so there was like so basically, I was assuming, or I was thinking that maybe someone switched the balls out. And now someone else has the official ball that's probably signed, and she has a dupe, right? But that's my United States collective thinking, okay? Apparently, in Japan, there is a lot more respect for humanity, for one another, okay? And so that's another idea of, like, you assuming the worst, not because that's what it is, but maybe it's a more of a collective thing, right? Maybe it's a societal thing. I grew up in New York City, and I was always taught to protect myself, protect my stuff. People are going to steal from you. It was a very, like, dog eats dog world, a very survival type mentality. And so, when I saw the post, I automatically started thinking back into the society I'm a part of, right? The culture I'm a part of, where there are cultures that are not like this. And so that's an example, I feel, of, like, just assuming the worst when I could just be assuming that they coming from a good place. And I thought it was so funny that, I had the collective thoughts first. And I was just like, I want better for my brain, right? Like, I want my brain to assume that everything is in love, everything is kindness, right? But that's just not the world I grew up in. And I mean, looking at the news these days in New York City, I don't even know what is going on with us. But I'm praying for us. We gonna be all right. We are going to be okay. But yeah, that's just the idea. Like, just coming from a space of just believing that people have love-filled intentions. And I know that, that can get a little iffy, but, let's find some harmony in that. And with that being said, I also just feel like, the idea of brave spaces just have so many benefits. And some of those are like, we allow, when we are in brave spaces, there is authentic connection, right? Because brave spaces are encouraging genuine interactions. They foster deeper connections between individuals. When people feel they can share their true selves, relationships become more meaningful and trust is built. There's also possibility for personal growth. By stepping out of our comfort zones and embracing vulnerability, individuals can experience significant personal development. So, like, brave spaces provide opportunities to confront our fears, challenge limiting beliefs, and build resilience. I remember years ago, I used to tell people, like, I practice being myself. Part of my remembrance journey was me getting comfortable with the idea that of being too much. I used to think I was too much, too much, too much. And then I had, a friend tell me, like, you're never too much, you're always enough. And I grounded into that truth because, yes, I'm never too much. I'm always enough, baby. Okay, you get what you're getting. This is it. And I used to go to these vibe sessions, and, like, they were a group of women of color that come together once a month and just on different topics, but it was really focused on soul remembrance and healing. And these were vulnerable spaces, but in these spaces I started practicing speaking my truth. Even when I was uncomfortable, even when my voice was shaking, I would just speak up. I would just keep going, right? And it was a space that was so, like, it was a brave space. It was just welcoming. um Even if people made faces, like, you didn't take it personal because you knew that was about them. You was just being, right? And the more I got comfortable in who I was, the more I was unbothered by other people's reactions to me. And so I practiced in those spaces, and then I started going out into the world Knowing that there was a group of people who loved me down, a group of people that even when they didn't disagree with me, they respected my truth and my authenticity. And so when I knew that there were already people in this world who loved me down, because at the end of the day, we are human and connection is a big part of our evolution and our feeling grounded in this world, and also our health, our well-being. And so knowing that I had this group of people who would love me down regardless, that first let me know that there's people in this world who will accept you for who you are, right? So I knew that there was nothing inherently wrong with me, okay? And so when other people outside had their reactions or responses to me, I was unbothered because I knew it. I started to realize it had very little to do with me and everything to do with them. And so, like, that's what these spaces provide you with, right? It provides you with an opportunity for your own personal growth, for you to have authentic connections, for you to be authentic, right? Because now you're in these connections where people aren't yes men, right? They're not going to just agree with everything you say, right? Y'all can have a disagreement and still be respectful about it. People can agree to disagree, and it's all good. Nobody's taking it personal. And I love a relationship that is honest and authentic, where you can just say what you feel without the fear that this relationship is going to be broken. That if I'm not a yes man and if I don't agree with everything you say, then I might lose you. That to me is not a healthy connection, okay? And I believe that relationships that allow for those uncomfortable moments are like relationships I want to be a part of. And I think that a lot of other people in this world would love them too. And so I feel like brave spaces introduce you to that, right? It fosters more of that. Okay. And so brave spaces also provide for empathy and understanding, because these spaces promote empathy and understanding among participants. When individuals share their stories and listen to others, they gain new perspectives and develop greater compassion. Sometimes we don't know what people are going through, and then when we hear somebody who we love or adore, or we never would have thought you were going through that, going through something, and yet they have their head up held high, right? Or they're sharing their perspective about like how they're journeying through that. You can also learn from it too. Even earlier when I mentioned, right, maybe the idea of a safe space is different for everybody, right? Like that's me being open to the idea, like, hey, maybe this universal safety isn't the goal, right? Maybe it's something else. What is that something else? And being open to hear other people's perspectives and beliefs about a subject or a thing. Because at the end of the day, I'm not creating safe spaces. So, I mean, it really doesn't affect me. But of course, I care about humans and everybody around me. So I do question things because I want to also make sure my people are good. Okay? So that's another thing. And then there is also the benefit of healing and transformation. Brave spaces can be therapeutic, right? Offering a supportive environment for individuals to process and heal from past traumas. The act of sharing and being heard can be profoundly healing. Sometimes we need to know, girl, I feel you. I see you. Brother, you're not alone. It's okay to soften up. It's okay to cry. Crying does not make you weak. Crying does not mean that you're not masculine, okay? Allow those emotions to process. That actually makes you brave. You're courageous. Keep doing you. Have your human experience. Don't allow anyone to shame or guilt you out of your human experience. Because when you allow for crying, when you allow for healing, when you allow for releasing, you are opening up your body, baby, okay? You allowing yourself to be more free. You're allowing yourself to be a vessel for the divine, for you, the truth of who you are to express, as opposed to your ego trying to control and keep you safe and disconnecting you from the truth of who you are in order to quote unquote protect you. My belief is that we don't need protection. We don't need to protect these egos. We don't need to protect these personas. Let people think what they want about them, because regardless of what anybody thinks about your persona or your ego, baby, the truth of who you are does not change. The truth of who you are does not change because of anyone's opinions, not even your own. The truth of who you are don't change. And so brave spaces also have the benefit of empowerment. It's encouraging vulnerability and courage, okay? And so when we're encouraging vulnerability and courage, it empowers individuals to take control of their narrative and make positive changes in their lives. Brave spaces can inspire confidence and a sense of agency, baby. Let's talk about autonomy. Let's talk about a liberation. That's what these brave spaces are fostering. That's what they're pouring into. And then we have the benefit of community building. Creating brave spaces help build a sense of community and belonging. Participants feel part of a supportive network where they can rely on others for support and encouragement. We also have enhanced communication skills, right? When we are engaging in honest, respectful dialogue and brave spaces, this improves our communication skills. We learn to express ourselves more effectively and listen actively to others. There's also the benefit of innovation and creativity. When individuals feel safe to take risks and share unconventional ideas, creativity and innovation flourishes, okay? Brave spaces can be incubators for new ideas and solutions. You got a wild idea, tell your people. Listen, when the membership is open, it is going to be a group of radical, okay, conscious disruptors, whether they are actively being conscious disruptors or that is what they're flowing into, okay, what they're evolving into. Because I'm an innovative person, right? I am a very much like, it is what it is, do you, be you. You know, I may not understand your choices, but I trust that God trusts you to be who you were designed to be, whatever purpose you were created for. I trust that you have everything you need to handle that. And though I may not understand the way you go about life, baby, I trust that you're going to be good. I trust the inner God in you. So I ain't got to police everything you're doing. I ain't got to police anything you're doing. I can trust that the God in you is going to support you in the way that you are being called to be supported. It's going to support you to be guided where you are being guided to for your purpose in this lifetime. And so, hello, okay, share your ideas. Talk about solutions that we may be like, girl, you sure? Yes, yes. Be innovative, be brave, be unconventional. Do it all, because that's what's going to make this world a better place. That's what's going to make this world a braver place. That's what's going to make this world a place where our uniqueness is acceptable, where our uniqueness and diversity is openly embraced. We are part of the change we wish to experience. And that may mean that not everyone is going to understand or accept it, but when you are in brave spaces, it will support you. It will help you create that foundation that you need to bravely go out there into the world and be unapologetic in your purpose, even when no one else does understand. And so the other benefit is, right, this reduced fear of failure. Emphasizing learning from mistakes reduces the fear of failure. Participants understand that errors are part of the growth process and are encouraged to try new things without fear of judgment. Y'all know I talk about human design, and I have a line 3 in my profile, and it's unconscious. And so with that line 3, my life is all about trial and error. There are no mistakes. Everything is a lesson learned. And so I embrace that. And so I also go out into the world sharing that. Like, I encourage people to try things. How are you gonna know if you don't try? How are you gonna know if you enjoy something if you don't go out there and try it? How are you gonna know if you can be successful if you don't try? Some people are so worried about being successful the first time that they don't even get started. But I'm going to always encourage us to go out there and try, give life a chance, give yourself an opportunity. Even if it don't go the way you expected, trust that you're learning from it. You're never going to be who you were before you started that. And that's a beautiful thing, at least in my opinion. And then with that, right, we have the benefit of the brave space. Now you have this increased resilience. Facing challenges and stepping out of comfort zones in a supportive environment builds resilience. Participants develop the ability to navigate difficulties with greater ease and confidence. There is transformative potential of brave spaces. And that's what I like to support. That's what I like to encourage. And that's what I feel like brave spaces are. Maybe we can't provide safe spaces, right, universally, but I do believe that we can provide brave spaces. And I also think about just like there's transformative potential in brave spaces. And my goal as a soul purpose guide and energy channeler is to help and support individuals in reconnecting with their core selves and fostering personal growth, fostering remembrance. And I believe that brave spaces provide the opportunity for that. Now, when we're talking about brave spaces and implementing them, I do also, before I head out, because I want this to be, my hope is that this is a conversation starter. Like I said earlier, I'm not one to really sit in on idea of safe spaces, but even as I was talking to you all, I was like, you know what? Safe spaces can mean so many things to different people. And so it doesn't really matter whether or not I believe that there's such thing as safe spaces. My focus is on brave spaces, and that's what I'm going to focus on, right? There's no need for me to bash safe spaces because they ain't got nothing to do with me. And I ain't creating it. So I have no idea what that's about because it doesn't resonate with me. But it probably does resonate with other people, and they create it in the way that works for them. They visualize it and they understand it from a perspective that supports their purpose. And I can respect that. And so for us, I wanted to share some practical tips on creating and maintaining brave spaces, right? Because it does require an intentional practices and a commitment to fostering a supportive and compassionate environment. And so when we are talking about creating and maintaining brave spaces, some of the tips I have is like establish clear intentions and guidelines. We want to define the purpose. You want to clearly articulate the purpose of the brave space to all the participants. You want to also collaborate with the participants to establish guidelines that promote respect, confidentiality, and active listening. Now, these tips I'm sharing, right, are just suggestions. These are just thoughts. Some things I think about, some things I brainstorm with ChatGPT. And so I'm sharing this with you all, but these are just suggestions, okay? So let's put that out there. All right, so the other tip is to foster a culture of respect and empathy. We want to model vulnerability. You know, as a facilitator, I often share my own experiences and vulnerability so I can set the tone. I'm very like transparent about my life. I used to be a person, I used to be so discreet because I used to be ashamed of my life, especially when it came to my upbringing. And then I started to own my own story, and now I share almost anything. Like I'm just like very like whatever because nothing is a big deal to me. So when people talk about like oversharing, I don't understand stuff like that. Like but again, right, we're all just different, right? And again, so many things are subjective. Just because it's a rule for one person doesn't mean it has to be a rule for you. And so I'm always a encourager of autonomy and being your own agent, right? Agency all through. Like you do you, because just because I think it's I have an opinion that goes against what you're doing doesn't mean that you are inherently wrong because I don't agree with it. No, it's just not for me. And so, like, that's the perspective I come with. And so, on top, as we're fostering a culture of respect and empathy, we want to encourage empathy, right? Promote active listening and empathy by encouraging participants to truly hear and understand each other's perspective. You don't have to agree with it to hear it. You don't have to agree with it to listen. You don't have to agree with it to acknowledge that person's lens. The other thing, we want to promote inclusivity and diversity. Value diverse voices. Ensure that all voices are heard and valued, especially those from people who may be underrepresented in the group or those who may be too shy to speak. We want to encourage everyone to be able to share their voice, even when it's shaky. To be for the listeners to be patient enough to wait for someone to voice their perspective, their concerns, even if it's not as quickly or not as polished as we think it should be. You know, part of promoting inclusivity and diversity is being aware of our biases. Acknowledge and address any biases or power dynamics that may affect the space. I remember in social work school, I always used to think it was so silly that people, it just like, social work school just felt like a place of where people expect perfection. And I thought it was so silly. It's like they tried so much to control what was coming out of people's mouths that I'm just like, let it come out, you know? Because we don't know what people are going out into the communities doing and saying if we don't allow them to be their true selves in these spaces with their colleagues. I want to hear the ways you are prejudiced. I want to hear your biases. If you have some racist point of views, I want to hear them. I want to know what I'm getting into. But that's just me, right? I'd rather know the truth. I'd rather know what I'm a part of. I'd rather know who you really are than to act as if it's not true because you're not like this perfect image of what it means to be a human. My dad, my dad growing up is like, no, he was known for lying. If he say he coming, dad ain't coming. If he say he's calling you back, he ain't calling you back. He say he being back, he ain't coming back. Right? Like he was just known for lying. And instead of us, you know, acting like it was this horrible thing, I think that most of his children just accepted it. I accepted him for who he was. All right, I know that you lie, right? So I'll call you out. If I really need you to show up, I will mention like, hey, I know you be BSing us a lot, but I really need you to show up. I'll just call it out. And that was our relationship. And it was never no shame around the fact that he lies, right? Like it just was part of who we knew him to be. But there was no shame around it. It was just so interesting, and I love that. I love that I got to experience that because I got to experience something which is deemed a bad character, a flaw, right? Like lying is just like a flaw in so many people's characters. I mean, in the idea of like who we are as humans. But in my world, it was just something like, hey, that's part of your character. You've done it enough. You've shown me that this is part of how you choose to express. I'm going to accept that version of you. I'm not gonna fight it. I'm not gonna deny it. I'm not gonna beg you to change. Nah, I'm gonna embrace it and I'm gonna work with you accordingly. And that's what I did. And I loved my dad down because even though he lied, he was also honest. He was honest in who he was, and I respected that. And so yeah, that's my take on the idea of like just allowing diversity and not shying away from the parts of individuals that we may deem unacceptable. I am not I'm not going to say that if it was a friend or someone else I would have stuck around. Probably not, but like my dad, because he was just so honest in who he was, including lying, I don't know, it was okay with me because I knew what I was getting. I knew what I was getting. At least you're not a good liar, right? That you could really pull the wool over my eyes. So I was good. But yeah, that's just little talk there. That's my boo. He passed 2 years ago, and every time I think about him, I'm like, oh, so grateful I got to experience you, sir, because you was a little vibe. You was a little vibe. Okay. So the other tip we have is encourage open communication. Active listening. We want to teach and practice active listening skills where participants listen without interrupting and reflect on what they've heard. Constructive feedback. We want to encourage giving and receiving feedback in a constructive and non judgmental manner. Yes, remember, we want to focus on what you did or what you said and not on your character. Because I know for myself, I have a brother, and like anytime he gets mad at me, he never focuses on what I said or what I did. It's always like an attack on my character. And I always think it's the most interesting thing because I'm just like, how do we even get here? And I know who I am. So nothing you're saying I even care about, but like, why are you doing it? And like, he's getting worked up because really it's just so emotional. It's how he's coping with his emotions, the pressure that's coming up in him by attacking my character, thinking that, I'm probably as sensitive about who I say I am as he is. Cancer. Cancer sons. I'm just saying. But yeah, so there's that. Also, create a supportive environment, okay? We want check-ins. Begin sessions with check-ins to gauge, how participants are feeling and address any immediate concerns. Emotional safety is also part of creating that supportive environment. We want to acknowledge that while complete safety cannot be guaranteed, the space will be supportive and understanding. Normalize vulnerability and mistakes. Celebrate courage. Acknowledge and celebrate acts of courage and vulnerability within the group. I always just be cheering my friends on. I tell them all the time, like, yo, that was very vulnerable of you. I don't even know if that's a way to say it, but like, I'd be like, that takes vulnerability. And what's interesting, like, as I say it, sometimes I'm like, I might think it requires vulnerability, but for some people, they probably don't even care, right? Like, it probably is no big deal to them at all. So that's another thing I think is like interesting, because I know I have a sister, she's a Cancer sun, and she's just so unapologetic about her truth. And like things she say, I know that so many people would turn their nose up at it or judge her for it, but she speaks about it so unapologetically. And I think that that's so courageous of her and so honest. But like, what if that's just who she is and it takes no courage at all, right? Like, it's just so interesting, just all of our perspectives and views and how we interact with the world. Um, did I already? Okay. So the next one is normalize vulnerability and mistakes. So I already said that, right? We want to acknowledge and celebrate acts of courage and vulnerability. But the other thing is we want to reframe mistakes. Emphasize that like mistakes are opportunities for learning and growth, not failures. Like I said, I have a line 3 in my profile and I'm all about trial and error. I'm all about living life. I'm all about experiences. I'm all about taking chances. Like, why not? If it don't work out the way I expected, clearly everything happens for a reason. Let me roll with it. I believe that life happens for me, not to me. So here we are. And so I'm a big supporter of reframing mistakes, the idea of mistakes, because a lot of what we perceive as happening, or a lot of our experiences, has a lot to do with the stories we tell ourselves. So if we reframe mistakes, we may walk into new situations differently. We may walk away from what some may consider failure with a more optimistic point of view. So provide support and resources. We want to offer support. We want to, if you're a facilitator, you may want to make yourself available for one-on-one support if the participants need it. You also want to share resources. You want to provide access to additional resources, such as articles and books or counseling service that can support participants' growth. This is part of the Brave Spaces. You want to maintain confidentiality. We can do confidentiality agreements. Ensure all participants agree to keep what is shared within the group confidential. Um, there's also like safe sharing. Remind participants that they can share as much or as little as they feel comfortable. Maybe they don't want to name names. That's okay. Maybe you want to make up names. That's okay. Be where you are. If where you are is like, I don't want to be all out there, I don't want to tell people business, this is my story, and so I don't want to put other people in the light of it, that's okay. Share as much or as little as what feels good for you. The other tip is to evaluate and adapt. So we want to encourage regular feedback. So solicit regular feedback from participants on what is working and what could be improved, right? This is a community space and it's for everyone's best interest that, we create it together. And so that's something to keep in mind when we're creating these brave spaces. And also like as it goes to evaluate and adapt is be flexible. Be willing to adapt the guidelines and practices based on the needs and feedback of the group. As I'm developing my membership program, one of the big things is feedback. So I will be open to continuous feedback. Like I really want us to create this space together. I want to hear what the members have to say, because at the end of the day, I have my lens, right? But like that's my own narrow lens. I don't know everything. I'm not thinking about every perceived possibility. I don't even know them all, right? So y'all, the members, have other perspectives and I want to hear them. Y'all are looking at things from your own lens. Let me in. Let me in, cuz you might have access to some perspective or idea that I don't. And I'm down to listen. I'm down. I think that is very helpful for other spaces to, I mean, you don't have to have the same lens or perspective I have about being flexible, but create your own that will support the and foster the environment that you're developing and that you're sustaining. So for the last like tip I have is like lead by example. Embody the principles. Consistently embody the principles of a brave space in your interactions and facilitation. Commit to your own continuous learning and development as a facilitator to better support the space. It's okay that we don't know everything, right? But we're all constantly learning and growing. We're all constantly being invited to an opportunity to evolve, an opportunity to adjust. And so that includes even your facilitation skills and abilities. And so, those are some of the tips I gave 10. Let's go over them again. Let's see. So here are, again, I'm going to say all the tips without going into details for creating and maintaining a brave space. We want to establish clear intentions and guidelines, foster a culture of respect and empathy, promote inclusivity and diversity, encourage open communication, create a supportive environment, normalize vulnerability and mistakes, provide support and resources, maintain confidentiality, evaluate and adapt, lead by example. By focusing on brave spaces, we emphasize resilience, mutual respect, and the transformative power of vulnerability. I know for me, like, I aim to help individuals reconnect with their core selves in a supportive environment. We all live in a world where we can't predict others' behavior and words and its impact on us. We can develop our ability to stay grounded even when uncomfortable. We can stay in our bodies where clarity is available in order to integrate this aspect of us that was triggered or activated. When I am guiding people on mindset work and when I'm guiding them as we talk about triggers and being activated by others, I'm always reminding us that a lot of times when we are activated, it has nothing to do with that present moment. Something from a past or a history or a story is being triggered. And so when we learn, when we're getting activated, instead of taking it like, whoa, you did this to me, we can kind of check in with ourselves and like, where is this coming from? What is the root of this emotion that's coming up? What is the root of this activation? And if we are grounded in our bodies, we can be with the moment as opposed to getting caught up in that activation, getting caught up in the stories like, you did this to me. But that takes practice. I'm not expecting everyone to be there or everyone to understand, this experience I'm talking about. And that's okay, right? Like, it takes practice, but the whole idea is like, if we could stay grounded in our body and not overwhelmed by the emotions that are spontaneously coming up, right? Because emotions are spontaneous. But we get to decide our response to the emotions, to the sensations. And that's kind of what, like, being in brave spaces can help you work with, because it's not saying you will never be activated, you will not be triggered. No. But it's saying even if you are triggered, even if you are activated, you will still feel understood. You will still feel accepted. You will be held during that process. And even if you can name it, like, if you're in these spaces, you can name like, hey, whoo, that just activated me, right? And it's a safe space to say that because no one's taking it personal. You're not saying you did this to me, because a lot of times when we say you did this to me, other people get defensive, right? It depends on where they are in their journey. But if we be like, hey, something you said just rubbed me wrong, like, I just felt, I got a little activated, right? And so I want to sit with this a minute, and then I want to come back and talk about what was said activated me, so so I could process it, right? And not only can I process it, I'm gonna grow from it, because now this is something new to my awareness that I can now integrate that aspect of me and remind that aspect of me we are safe. Nothing anyone says or does change the truth of who I am, and I can acknowledge what that was rooted in without feeling like I'm less than, without feeling like I'm not already whole. And so it's just so much that can come from when we are in brave spaces and when we learn how to stay grounded, even when we are uncomfortable, right? Even when we are triggered, even when we feel judged, that we can take a new look at it. We can look at it from another lens. And when we're in community, our community can support us in that. How beautiful that is. How beautiful that would be. If instead of getting activated and reacting from a place of defense or a place of I need to protect myself, we are able to stay grounded and say, ooh, there's something there. I want to explore that with us, right? And see it as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to remember our truth, and an opportunity to expand and embody the truth of who we are, to remember. And so brave spaces for me prioritize vulnerability, right? Because now we're encouraging people to share openly, even if it feels risky. Courage, supporting individuals in taking emotional risk, supportive responses, ensuring that responses to vulnerability are met with understanding and compassion. Then there's growth, emphasizing personal development through challenging yet supportive interactions. Listen, we cannot avoid being activated or triggered by things outside of us, right? We cannot avoid the human experience of experiencing emotions, but we can find ways to process it from a healthy lens, from a lens that support us and keep us grounded in our bodies. I've been reading, or I just finished reading about the spleen center in human design, and one of the things that the author Robin Wynn says is that, fear throws us out of our bodies. Fear throws us out of our bodies. When we are in a fearful state, we go to our mind, right? We're thinking a million things. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But if we can stay grounded in our bodies and just be with that feeling, get curious about it, we are able to be in a space where we can get to a place of clarity and solutions and understanding in the moment, as opposed to the stories we've already told ourselves that may not actually be necessarily truth, but maybe one possibility. At the end of the day, even when we are triggered or activated, it's not necessarily a negative thing. In my opinion, it's an invitation, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to integrate more of our truth, our divinity, We are clearing up the veil that separates us from the divine within. We are remembering, hey, I am the divine. I don't need to protect this persona. I don't need to protect this ego. It's made up. I created it. We created it. I have nothing to protect. This idea of who I say I am can change with time. It is changeable. But God within is everything, and yet nothing at all is eternal. It is everlasting. It does not change. It expresses differently, but it does not change. And so we have nothing to protect, in my opinion. Nothing anyone says or does changes the truth of who we are. You get to know that you're safe now. And I believe that brave spaces remind us of this. It helps us cultivate this. It helps us remember this. And it creates a space where we can grow, where we can remember our truth, where we can embody our truth, where we can confront the shame and the guilt that we are carrying in our bodies and say, I love you. You are already perfect. You are already enough. That choice you made does not make you a bad person. You made a poor choice, and that is okay, because that is a part of the human experience. Every day or every moment we get to breathe, we have opportunity. Embrace spaces are spaces that help you remember that truth. They are spaces that allow your humanity. They are spaces that allow every aspect of what it means to be human to be seen, acknowledged, and loved on. So, I don't know too much about safe spaces and being able to create them, but I am all for brave spaces. And so I would love to hear your perspective and your idea about anything I said, or even about the idea of a safe space. What do you consider a safe space? How do you cultivate a safe space? What are some tips you have? If you believe in safe spaces, what are some tips you have to cultivate and sustain a safe space? What about a brave space? What about a courageous space? What kind of spaces do you cultivate or you want to cultivate? I want to get a conversation started, right? This is an opportunity to talk more. So I love you all. I thank you all for being here. I thank you all for listening. I'm so grateful to be invited to this topic and to have this audio now, because I can just share it all around as opposed to continuing to explain my thoughts on brave spaces or safe spaces. So I love you all, and I will speak to you all soon. You were listening to Charlie's Truth audio blog, entry 15. Peace.